Good evening. We're going to get to all the fun in just a minute, but before the show starts, I wanted to share something that Pete and I have talked about. Today has been a dark day for human rights in our country, and we at ATG Cast support the freedom of choice in America. We stand with the women, the minorities, and every other person affected by this political and religious attack on reproductive rights, body autonomy, and personal freedoms. We believe that reproductive rights are not only healthcare rights, but human rights. This is about a country that should not prioritize those that have over those that do not. This is about ensuring that not only is the right to choose protected, but so are the rights to love and marry who you want and family plan the way you want. These should be protections, not prosecutions. This is a fight that has been going on in our country for decades, and it clearly isn't letting up. We encourage you to do anything you can to help out. You'll find an image pinned on my Twitter feed @WillsPod with a whole list of organizations that you can donate to and volunteer with to help those who are going to need it now more than ever. That said, while we continue to fight, we know we also need fuel to help keep us going. And we hope that escaping tonight into our favorite galaxy far, far away for an hour or so will help you out and will fill your tank. We are thankful that you are here.
Well, welcome to Streaming Star Wars. How are you doing? I'm Pete Fletzer. I'm here with my good friend, Nick Milky. Nick, how are you doing, buddy? How are things?
Man, it's been a day, but I will say that given the conversations tonight, it seems like the only appropriate greeting is hello there.
Hello there. Yes. Wow. So as you alluded to at the top of the show, we definitely thought about, is it right to jump in and have fun and talk about Star Wars during a time that's It's stressful for the country and for many of our good friends, and stressful is really being polite with the wording.
Yes,
but
no doubt.
But we decided that it makes sense to be here. There's a lot going on in the Star Wars world, and as you said, if we could take some time to move on and talk about some other things and then be ready for the fight, then we're ready for it. So
without a doubt.
We are so glad that you're here. We have a full agenda tonight. It is going to be
really
packed.
Do.
I mean, the Kenobi series felt like it was jam-packed with all the stuff that was a part of it. But we're going to do our usual. We're going to do the news. We're going to talk about the show. We have a bad takes and brown liquor set up, but most importantly and most fun, at some point about a little later on in the show, once we start talking, actually, I don't know when we're going to do it. It'll be at some point. We're going to start bringing
roll with it.
We're going to bring you all in to hang out with us and give us your thoughts, opinions, hot takes, things that you enjoyed and didn't about the show, about the Kenobi show. And, hey, we're looking forward to Andor as well. And it's not that far away, man. August.
It's so much going on, and it's so funny. And of course, we make this joke about the news every week, and we're going to do the news in just a minute. But we also, on a show like this week, we just were like, well, we'll just talk about Kenobi or the Kenobi finale.
Yeah.
And we don't have a guest per se. So we're like, we'll just do it. The two of us have plenty that we can talk about.
Right.
And now here we are with what seemed like just one thing. We've got a packed show, and I'm excited about it. And again, this show the light has guided me through my day with all the things that were going on in the world, at work, just a busy family day. There was so much going on. And so it is exciting to be here. We've got a bunch of folks tuned in already. So glad to see all of you in the chat. We hope you will hang out the whole time because we're excited to see your lovely faces later in the show.
Yeah.
If you've got a webcam and a mic, if you've got just a mic, whatever, we want to hear from you because, we the people are the Star Wars fans and community. So
100%.
we're gonna talk about all of it.
100%. There's so much great stuff and so much to talk about with the Kenobi series. Before we get to the news, maybe just give me just your. I'm gonna throw it at you. Give me your sort of one sentence feeling after Wednesday morning when you watched part 6 of Kenobi and the series finale.
The Kenobi series was developmental. I'm going to go with developmental, and I'll get into that more as we talk about the episode and as we talk about the series as a whole and why that's the word that kind of popped into my brain just now because I didn't know you were going to ask me that question.
I like to keep you on your toes, Nick. I would
Hey,
hate
it's
for you
working. You're doing a good job.
I don't want you to be bored.
Before we get to the news, and I rearranged our show notes from last time because we did have a guest last week. Normally we do our toast after the news when we bring our guest in to include them in that. But it's you and me tonight. We're going to probably toast every guest that calls in with us a little bit later on, which means bad news by the end of the show. But we'll deal with that when we get there. Right. I want to raise a toast to all of our friends in the chat. I want to raise a toast to you, my friend, and cheers to a happy Star Wars night.
Happy Star Wars. Awesome. Well, as you said, we do have a ton to get to. So why don't we just start with the news and then stick around with us and we will get into the Kenobi discussion in just a few minutes. But Nick, if you're ready, I'm going to let it rip.
Let's do it. Deborah Chow weighs in on more Kenobi. A beloved Jedi Master returns, and the Maestro hangs up his baton. Give us 5 minutes, and we'll give you the galaxy. Another week, another flood of news, rumors, clickbait, and conversation. I am Nick Milkey, and welcome to Disturbances in the Force. All the links to the original sources can be found in the notes, and I encourage you to check them out. With the series finale of Obi-Wan Kenobi not 48 hours old, talk continues to circulate about the possibility of extending that story. In previous weeks, we've already heard stars Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen both express a desire to return to their roles for more adventures. Last week in British GQ magazine, McGregor said, quote, "If I could do one of these every now and again, I'd just be happy about it," end quote. Now we're getting comments from both director Deborah Chow and Lucasfilm president Kathy Kennedy in an interview with Entertainment Tonight earlier this week. First up is Chow. When asked about another season, she said, quote, "For this one, we really did conceive it to be a limited series. It really is one big story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, so we weren't thinking past that." She goes on to say, "I think, if it was to go forward, it would only be if there was a real reason for another one," end quote. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy, while also not confirming more Kenobi, did seem a little more open to the idea, stating, quote, "Well, frankly, we did set out to do that as a limited series." She continues to say, "But I think if there's a huge engagement and people really want more Obi-Wan, we'll certainly give that consideration because the fans, they speak to us. And if we feel like there's a real reason to do this and it's answering a why then question, then we'll do it. But we'll see," end quote. There is no current announcement for a second season of Obi-Wan Kenobi. The return of Liam Neeson's Qui-Gon Jinn in the season finale of the Obi-Wan show was not entirely a surprise, but was also something of a much-anticipated reveal in the 6-episode series. While Neeson had dodged questions about his involvement in the show, likely due in part to NDA restrictions, he has now spoken to The Hollywood Reporter about his cameo appearance, saying, quote, "I certainly didn't want anyone else playing Qui-Gon Jinn, and I wanted to show my respect for George Lucas and that mythical world that he created." Neeson also told The Hollywood Reporter, "Plus, Ewan McGregor is a pal, and I loved working with him during The Phantom Menace 25 years ago," end quote. We do also know, as revealed at Star Wars Celebration back in May, that Neeson will also be returning to the Star Wars galaxy in the upcoming Tales of the Jedi animated series. Tales of the Jedi is set to debut in late 2022. Well, it seems it didn't take long for Moses Ingram to find her next gig. The Obi-Wan Kenobi co-star and Emmy nominee was announced this week as signing on to join the Apple TV Plus limited series Lady of the Lake. Ingram will join Star Wars alumnus and current Thor: Love and Thunder star Natalie Portman. Lady in the Lake is an adaptation of Laura Lippman's novel and is created and directed by Alma Har'el, according to Apple. The limited series takes place in the 60s Baltimore, where an unsolved murder pushes housewife and mother Maddie Schwartz, played by Portman, to reinvent her life as an investigative journalist and sets her on a collision course with Cleo Sherwood, Ingram's character, a hardworking woman juggling motherhood, many jobs, and a passionate commitment to advancing Baltimore's Black progressive agenda. Lady in the Lake is slated to debut on Apple Plus, and no date has yet been announced. It seems like Star Wars mainstay and cornerstone John Williams might finally be retiring at 90 years old. In an interview with the Associated Press, Williams stated, quote, "At the moment, I'm working on Indiana Jones 5, which Harrison Ford, who's quite a bit younger than I am, I think has announced will be his last film. So I thought, if Harrison can do it, then perhaps I can also," end quote. Williams indicated that working on a film score typically takes 6 months or more, and at his age, that amount of time means more now than it did earlier in his life. He also made it a point to indicate that he doesn't ever want to completely close off any one activity. When speaking about the importance of music in his life, Williams said, quote, "It's given me the ability to breathe, the ability to live and understand that there's more to corporal life. Without being religious, which I'm not especially, there is a spiritual life, an artistic life, a realm that's above the mundanities of everyday realities. Music can raise one's thinking to the level of poetry. We can reflect on how necessary music has been for humanity. I always like to speculate that music is older than language, that we were probably beating drums and blowing on reeds before we can speak. So it's an essential part of our humanity." He concluded, "It has given me my life," end quote. The official soundtrack for Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi, composed by Natalie Holt, William Ross, and including a new main theme created by the legendary John Williams, will arrive on digital platforms on June 27th, 2022, according to the film website filmmusicreporter.com. The soundtrack will feature 31 tracks by Holt, who created music for the Loki series and Nightfall, Ross, who created music for Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and Williams, who has created such iconic themes for movies like Indiana Jones, E.T., Jurassic Park, and many, many more, and will total approximately 70 minutes worth of music over the 31 tracks. The soundtrack is slated to be released to digital platforms by Walt Disney Records on Monday, June 27th. Well, that wraps it up for this week's Disturbances in the Force. Make sure to check out the ATG Cast podcast stream for weekly one-on-one interviews with the people behind the fandom. This Thursday, Podcast of the Will sits down with Chase from the Pink Milk Podcast, and they break down Chapter 5 of the Phantom Menace Canon Study. Please subscribe for regular updates, follow us on all your social media channels at ATGcast, and visit our website at atgcast.com to keep up with us, find our merch, and get information about supporting the show as an ATG patron. And thank you for listening, and may the Force be with you.
Nicely done, Nick. Very nicely done.
Thank you, my friend.
Lots of news. Before we get any further, we have had some requests for just to meet General Hux.
General Hux is in the building.
General Hugs, I guess. Hello. Hello. Say hello. Oh, he's mad. He's mad. All right.
Oh, look at the kitty.
All right.
Love it.
I feel like a magician.
See, you never know what you're going to get on this show. You're going to get cats. You're going to get
news, opinion.
Whatever. That's right. News, opinions, and cats. That's going to be.
That's the secret. That's the secret, man. Everybody knows the internet.
News,
is all
opinions,
about
and cats. That's all it takes.
So, Nick, where do we want to get started? Maybe we should just sort of start with our, sort of the episode review.
Yeah.
And this is where I have no idea where to even start with this episode. So I guess, Nick, when did you watch it? Were you like...
I did not stay up, and I was... What did I watch? Oh, I watched our friend Kyle Katarn. I think Chris and Dan maybe were on with him this last week. Anyhow, there was somebody on, and they were streaming, and they were wrapping up at like 10 o'clock my time. And I think I even put in the chat, I was like, don't you guys want to do this for 4 more hours? So I have something to watch until it gets to be 2 a.m. and it's time for me to, watch the show. I toyed with the idea and ultimately decided it was probably not going to benefit my rapidly aging body. So I went to bed and I got up at 4:45 and I went out to the couch, and to a lot of people's disappointment, I usually watch the first time on my phone just because I usually wake up early, throw in an earbud, watch it. But this week I went out to the couch by myself, and my TV hooks up to my little Bluetooth earbuds. So I had the TV audio in my ears and watched it on the big screen at 4:45 by my happy little self sitting on the couch. And when it was over, I didn't know what I was supposed to do with myself.
Yeah, I woke up at like 2:45 for some reason in the middle of the night. I think I'm going to blame the cat, but honestly, I think I was literally kid at Christmas, like so excited to watch it. And I was like, I'll just fall back asleep. It'll be fine. I'll get up. And then I said, screw it. I'm going. So like you, honestly, it's so funny. You and I are essentially the same person, just one with a Southern accent. And I usually watch it on my phone in the morning in bed before anybody gets up. But I traversed downstairs. I turned on the PlayStation 5 and I put the headphones on through the controller and I watched it on the big TV. And I got to say, I'm really happy that I did it that way, because I don't feel like you can get this episode on a phone, and at least the first time. You can watch the second or third time and pick up the pieces, but To your point, I did not know what to do because I thought in my head, I was like 3 o'clock, I'll watch it, 4 o'clock, it'll be over. I'll go back to sleep. I was tweeting. I was like,
there was no
viewing it
sleeping
again.
happening when I was done. In fact, I woke up to messages from you because you watched it an hour ahead of me.
Right.
And I think, and Scotty stayed up. So I had messages from both of you in our little group feed. And like, as I got out of my bed and headed for the living room, I just glanced at my phone and I saw messages and I just turned it over. I was like, I can't look at that right now because, you know, there could be something there I don't need to see. But yeah, and there was no hope in me going back to sleep either. And it wasn't restful sleep to get to 4 or rest. Yeah, I kept waking up going, I should just be up right now. I should be up right now. But I tried to be responsible and it only kind of worked.
It's pretty amazing that this show has had that kind of an impact. And I'll tell you what, when I asked you before about sort of, one sentence to describe the show, the way I would put it, maybe we can dig into some sort of key observations. Again, there's been 14,627 podcasts and YouTube shows that have broken the show down. So we're not going to go scene by scene. I want to hit on some of the things that we found really unique and really kind of what made the show special. And you said what was the word you used to describe?
I said developmental.
I'm using a similar word, and I'm going to call it epilogue, because to me, what this show did, I think Alden Diaz and several other people have called this episode 3.5, and that's really what it is. But the thing that I loved about it when it was all said and done was that it took us from prequels to original trilogy. It took us from the end of Revenge of the Sith to up to, a couple years, 10 years, 9 years away from A New Hope. But what it did was it personalized the story. And while I think the prequels did a nice job of telling Anakin's story, it had to be told in this, by the way, this universe, this galaxy that we play in, here's what happened to get it to where it is. So you were getting an enormous galactic political story. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you're trying to learn about this kid who just has lost everything and made the wrong choices for maybe the right reasons, you could argue, and the impact that it had. And as great as the Clone Wars animated series was, and I wouldn't change a thing about that, you got more galactic level. And I think this is one of the things that threw off some of the fans who didn't like it, this was really such a personal story about Obi-Wan. Obviously his name is in the title, but it was real. It's, for me, more than anything else, it really solidified Anakin and Darth Vader as the villain. What's your reaction to that?
I as you were speaking, you helped me figure out what I really actually wanted to say, which is, it wasn't when I say it was developmental, what I mean is it fleshed out so much of the story we already had. That's really what I wanted to say. And you hit it exactly right. In the prequels, we had to do all these big things to quickly whittle it down to this point where we are in 4 to create this, we got to do all these things to tell you how we got from here to here. What this show has done just in 6 episodes, less than 6 hours, has made all of those things that both happened in the prequels and what happened especially in 4, it shored that all up. It made it such a better and more complete story. It's the bridge. It bridged the gap between those two series of movies. It happens with Anakin and Obi-Wan. We get the flashback in episode 5 where they're fighting. He's talking about his desire to win is going to be his undoing. That comes back not only with Obi and Darth Vader, but Vader uses that against Reva. When they're having the fight, she's not worth drawing his weapon. But he also, in the process of trying to win, gets defeated by Obi-Wan. He gets tricked. He gets, all that stuff. And then we get the rematch of the century in this episode, which, my God, I can't wait till we talk about that. But it fleshed out and it really bridged the gap between those two series of movies, including not only Obi-Wan, but for me, it was Leia. So much of the stuff with Leia. So much of the stuff in the relationship with Leia and the little moments with Ben, with her when they're in the Death Star hallway and Luke rescues her. I'm here with Ben Kenobi. Ben Kenobi, where? That's when the guard is down. It's not the hologram message that everybody complained about. She acted like she didn't know him. Of course she did. She was a diplomat. and she
Right.
was a spy and she was a rebel. She knew what she was doing. She wasn't going to record a message that could fall into enemy hands that goes, hey, remember those times that we were best friends and you helped me out and all that stuff?
Right.
She was professional. General Kenobi, years ago, you served my father in the Clone Wars.
Right. This is a woman
So,
who shows no emotion when her home planet is destroyed, and then she
right.
watches Obi-Wan. I will say, her Luke watched Obi-Wan die, and we got his reaction. I
Right.
want to find a cut of Leia's reaction,
Leia's
because
reaction.
that was, yeah, that changes everything, right?
Yep. And I love this. Boop says it may not be all about lifting rocks, but it's a very useful skill.
It certainly is. And
yeah, for me, fleshing out Leia was such a big part of this. The Obi Leia relationship really spoke to me, of course, on levels as a father with daughters.
Sure.
As having friends who have adopted children. The stuff with her and Bail on Alderaan.
Yep.
You are an Antilles. I mean, a Bail.
Organa.
Organa. I'm sorry, Bail Antilles. That's Captain Antilles. Yeah, you are an Organa through and through. He puts his hand on her heart. And one of the things, and this is such a parent thing, every time Obi-Wan Kenobi talked to Leia, he got down on her level. And that said so much to me about how he knelt down to speak to that child.
Yeah. I think let's talk a second about patience with the show as well, because I think that's the key thing for this. I think I would love to talk to somebody who's willing to have an honest conversation about, and in fact, I always talk about Adam, my friend across the street, who we see those Thursday night openings of things. He was the one who sent me just a week and a half ago, why is Obi-Wan such a wimp? Right. Today he came over, we had a beer in the garage, as you do with your neighbors, and he was like, that lightsaber duel was the most impressive thing I've ever seen. It's my favorite scene in Star Wars now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's, and he got there, which was a relief to me, because I knew there were there were certain people who were complaining about the series that were never going to get there. They gave up on it as soon as, before it even happened.
Mm-hmm.
But it's great to speak to somebody who's a fan, and they are able to kind of, they had to struggle with it, which is great, because that means you went through Obi-Wan's story as well. Right. So what's your thoughts on the importance of patience? I have a couple specific points, but what might you have?
Well, I mean, and you and I, of course, we talk multiple times a day and about the show and about Star Wars and fandom and all those things. And it never ceases to amaze me when somebody sees the first or second episode of something and they're like, holy crap, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Right.
And you're like, there's 5 more, right? There's 6 more, there's it can't be the dumbest thing you've ever seen until it's at least over with. You have to be able to see it all. And so, again, our favorite sting that we use sometimes is Twitter, because the internet likes to be mad.
Right.
For all the people that complained about Obi-Wan is weak. Why is he so weak? Why isn't he fighting? Why isn't he this? Then we get this battle in the episode 6, in the final episode. I lost my mind in the best way when Obi-Wan stands up with both arms out, saber in his hand, and just starts hurling boulders at Darth Vader. But I saw people complaining about that on Twitter and complaining about, why would he do that? He wouldn't do that kind of thing. I'm like, this is what you asked for, and now you're getting badass Obi-Wan, and now it's not what he would do. I don't get it.
Yeah, it is interesting that the response was what it was. And again, I think a lot of it just comes down to the fact that there needed to be patience. And the specific point that I wanted to make about patience was, I saw a number of people, I don't hate to use the word complain, a lot of people commenting about, how come we haven't heard Vader's theme yet? How come? Why is Holt not willing to use John Williams' score? He's brilliant. Why would she think he's above it? All that stuff. If they had used Leia's theme and Vader's theme during the first 5 episodes, you wouldn't have been crying. I mean, literally, it's funny. One of my favorite podcasts is Thank the Maker with all the emo band guys, Nick Gunbarian and a bunch of those guys. They always talk about how, I was watching the show and I was in tears, and I'm always like, is that hyperbole? I mean, they are emo guys, so maybe they are. But I was sitting there on my couch at 3:45 in the morning, in tears, literally, when he was talking to Leia and to young Luke, because the themes came in. John Williams' music, and it's sad and well earned, the retirement of John Williams. But if they'd played Leia's theme throughout, it would have been lost. It's like in the sequels, and I think James Bainey said it when he was on with us a couple weeks ago. The sequels ruined the Force theme, ruined
Right.
a lot of the
Mhm.
Star Wars themes because
Yep.
they just overused them.
Yeah.
Here they were used perfectly. And my favorite musical cue was when they were chasing Roken's ship. There was an homage to the Millennium Falcon chase from
Yes, there
Empire
was.
Strikes Back.
Yes,
And
there was.
I was listening to, I remember like sitting there listening to it and thinking, is that, no, that's not it, but it's a nice variant of it.
It's
And
really good. Yeah.
and it brought you to Empire Strikes Back. It brought you
Mhm.
into the things that
Mhm.
we know and love.
Well, and yeah, and like you said, I think I said in a group text that we had earlier today, the Force theme, Duel of the Fates, those have become marketing tools. Those
Yep.
have become, hey, they played that thing. This is how we get your attention in a trailer. This is how we get your attention in a commercial. This is how we get, X, Y, and Z. So when they do that, it catches your attention. And then when it doesn't show up in the show, it, messes everybody up and they get mad and they get whatever. So I did like the use of the Force theme as Obi's coming out of the ship.
Yep.
When on Alderaan, the door opens and Leia says, "What do we have today? Another cousin?" And he comes out. And of course, I love the truly kid-like nature of it, where split second later, there's Lola, and she's like, "Lola, like I don't care about the dude." I'll come
Right.
back
That
in
was
a minute."
hilarious. Yep.
But the Force theme played in the background of that as he's coming off the ship, or maybe it's when he's getting on to leave. Either way, they use that, and in that moment, I did love that because it is the wise Jedi heading off to hopefully sleep, whatever it is that he's going to do.
It's interesting too because this show took so much care. And actually, before I go into that next point, we just put in the chat, if you're hanging out
Yes.
with us and you want to give us your thoughts about the show, jump on in now. We like I said, we put the link up. All you need is a webcam and a mic. Even if you don't have a webcam, you just want to join by audio, that's great too. We don't need to see your face if you're not cool with that, but we'd love to see your face. Go ahead and join us, and we'll bring you into the show. But where I was going with that is there has been so much. That is one thing I think about this show, even more so than Mando and Boba Fett. Boba Fett was a hey, remember this festival, and I loved it. I thought it was great, but it was the way it was done in this show was really well thought out. There was nothing that was put in there for the sake of, hey, remember when we did this, and hey, remember that thing. It was all very well connected, right down to, and this is something I picked up today, when and it just struck me, it was so Star Wars when Obi-Wan lands on the moon to fight Vader, and he discovers that Lola is in his pocket. He puts Lola down, and as Obi-Wan leaves the ship, Lola does a little like R2 would have. But that's such a Star Wars thing.
Such a Star Wars thing.
Subtle. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't comedic. It was just so well done. I thought it was
well, and it was, to speak exactly to your point, I was listening to somebody yesterday, and they literally were recapping the list of all of the things that were in Book of Boba Fett. And you see the difference between a Filoni Favreau and a Deborah Chow. I mean, obviously they were involved in executive producing levels and that kind of thing, but like Filoni Favreau have made no secret about, we like to do the stuff that we did as kids in the sandbox with our toys. What if we had this? What if we had this guy? What if we had this gun? What if we had Kwaki and Mucky lizards on spits? Like all the things. And somebody listed off literally like the entire list of all the things that were in Mando. And I even listening to it, I'm going, holy cow, there's so much stuff that they packed into that.
Right.
Obi-Wan was done so well that, of course, you got fan service moments. You get a thermal detonator, you get, X, Y, and Z. But I said to somebody, and this is not intended to be a hot take, but I think maybe the most fan servicey thing, if we're using that kind of cliche definition, was the appearance of Qui-Gon at the end.
Yep. Go ahead.
It was great. We knew it had to happen at some point. They had teased it too many times with him trying to connect, him trying to whatever. But where I thought it's going to be a part of Obi-Wan finding himself and getting his groove back. He's finally going to be in a moment in that pile of rocks, and he's finally going to hear from Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon's going to go, look, you could do this all along. You didn't need me. Now go do it. Obi-Wan found himself on his own, which there's power in that story too.
Yep.
And the fact that he drew his strength in the Force from the good of those children and the other people that he was protecting. And so then he's finally just free, and he gets to see Qui-Gon. So Qui-Gon becomes the fan service moment, which was also fun.
Yeah, 100%. And let's talk briefly about the Qui-Gon moment, because I think it's one of those things that we all. I mean, I released the clip yesterday. We called it. We knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not the only ones. I'm not saying we're geniuses.
Breaking real ground here, Pete.
Right. Yes. We also knew that we were going to see Obi-Wan Kenobi in the show. And I don't know if anybody else was thinking that was going to happen, but no. But it was interesting for two reasons. Number one, I agree. It felt fan servicey. It almost felt out of place. And I mean that in a good way. It didn't feel like it felt a little out of place. But a lot of people, and Scotty talked about this last week. Tatooine Sons has talked about this as well.
Mm-hmm.
How each episode has mirrored something about its corresponding film episode, and to see Qui-Gon at the end was just like seeing the Force Ghost at the end of Jedi. And what I liked about it though too was I was glad to hear what you said, because in hindsight, if Qui-Gon showed up when he was still on Roken's ship and about to leave, it would have felt like, yeah, he still needs his master. But what happened was he found himself, and then he was finally ready to find his master, which I think is such a big piece of it. So,
hey, we've got a caller, and I want to get to our callers because we've dropped the link once. We'll drop the link again. I do want to respond to one comment real quick if I can, and we talked about it earlier in the show, but L14CV, welcome. May have just gotten here, may have missed me talking about this a minute ago. They said, talk about how Obi-Wan rewrites legend with Leia and the hologram. It's implied that Leia had never met Obi-Wan. It's implied in books and comics also. I think there's a lot of power in that word implied, because what we get, and what I said just a few minutes ago, I'm sorry if you just got here and missed it, Leia was a diplomat. Leia was a spy. Leia was a rebel. At this point, what we get in Rogue One, as you know, obviously Bail is already working with, Mon Mothma, the rebels, the beginning parts of that. And he says, I know who to send. She's already doing spy stuff at this point. She's already, she's smart enough to know I can't record a message and send it out into the world revealing my hand. I can't record a message that shows, hey, I have personal connections. I know this guy. He knows my father. Because what we also know, when she gets captured by Vader, is she says, this is a diplomatic, I'm on a diplomatic mission from Alderaan. Like, she's still playing it cool. She's still undercover. So she can't record a message that is going to, give away the fact that she's on the inside. So she has to play it cool. And I think the reason that that does throw everybody off, and I understand how that could, I think we get the reveal of that when Luke rescues her in the Death Star hallway in the detention center. When the door opens, I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you. Here to rescue me? Yeah, I'm here with Ben Kenobi. Ben Kenobi, like, her guard drops. It shocked her so much to hear him say, I'm here with Ben Kenobi. That's when you realize, no, she does know who that is, and she is connected. Mm-hmm. So NTW has a great point. She's basically committing open treason by recording that message. Yep. And so she does have to play it cool. So I understand where, and even my dad had that similar comment to that. He was like, I thought she didn't know who that was. And so it's just an interesting point. And I think, again, this is what storytelling does for it. It gives us the opportunity to kind of feel out those stories and, give them some more context along the way.
Great conversation. And let's keep it going with our good friend, our first caller of the night. Hold on, I got a little thing here. Hold on. I'm ruining it. Here we go.
There he is.
Gentlemen, what's up, fellas?
My friend.
Good to see you, Jeff.
Nick. Yeah. First things
Star Wars
first.
Friday. Cheers.
Yes, first things first. Happy Star Wars. Yeah.
Happy Star Wars. Man, thank y'all for letting me on the show.
Of course. We are so glad to have you.
I was telling Nick earlier in the week, I was like, I cannot wait for the show Friday. Like, man, there's so much to dive into this episode. It's just insane. And there's some stuff that I made fun of, too, like we always do. When we love Star Wars so much, the things we make fun of. So I made fun of a few things too, but all in all, this episode was just, it was mind blowing.
So what was your first, what's your biggest takeaway from the episode? And well, let me start with a different question. How has this episode changed the original trilogy for you?
It didn't change it in the sense of making it better or worse. Like I'm like we talked about before, where I just love Star Wars. So if you just give me Star Wars,
Jeff froze. Oh my
Uh-oh.
goodness.
Jeff froze.
He was so excited that he froze. We put him in the
That's right.
carbonite.
He got.
Come on, internet. Internet.
There we
There
go.
he is.
All right, internet's back. Try it again. Oh, at least he's stuck smiling this time, which is
Oh well. Do I have audio at least, or does it freeze it all?
yeah,
together?
we got some audio. Yep, there's your
We
audio.
got a little bit
Okay.
of it. Keep
Okay.
going.
So I just loved the connections to the original trilogy with his dialogue, the way he spoke. Ewan McGregor is so good in this role. Like, as much as Alec Guinness is Obi-Wan Kenobi, like Ewan McGregor is Obi-Wan freaking Kenobi. That story I told you, Nick, about him cussing that guy out in traffic and the guy looking over at him and realizing that's freaking Obi-Wan Kenobi when he was shooting the guy out in traffic. But he is so he so owns this role that, I mean, he can do anything in this role and I'm in. And so all it did for me was just make me love the OG trilogy even more. It just kept calling back to it. It just kept taking me back to it. And as like Nick said, this was our childhood. The OG trilogy was our prequels for some of the kids nowadays that are 20 years old now. Those were our things. So it just took me back with so many things, and there were so many callbacks that just got me all warm and fuzzy.
Well, and I think to draw a parallel to what you're saying and talking about that right now, as somebody, all three of us are of an age that we grew up with the original trilogy first. We were, college and older when the prequels came out. And so we had a different relationship to those stories. And honestly, I have come to appreciate the prequels more in the last 10 years than I did when they came out. But honestly, this series did a lot for me to continue to do that, to continue to love the prequels even more, drawing the connections between, the Anakin Obi-Wan relationship. I'll be honest, I've plugged it a bunch so far. Everybody needs to read Mike Chen's Brotherhood.
Oh my goodness.
It's such a good book, and it literally picks up where
I've never read that.
It picks up where Anakin is being knighted as a Jedi. And so he's no longer a Padawan. And so they're both sent off on different missions, having to deal with each other, on either side of it. But this series has done a lot, like I said, to flesh out those connecting points in the OT that I love, but also give me even more appreciation for the prequel trilogy stuff.
Yes, totally agree. And Phantom Menace, I already adored that movie. I don't know if Scotty's still around, but every time I watch that movie, I think of his reactions to that movie and how much he loves that movie.
No doubt.
And I was thinking about him, Kenobi, Wednesday night, or not Wednesday night, but Wednesday morning when I'm watching it and I'm crying my eyes out towards the end. I'm like, you know what? Somewhere out there, Scotty J-Road would be proud of all the tears shedding during this episode.
That's right.
Because I'm not going to lie, I'm standing there. I never sat down. I stood up the whole time. Like, okay, I'm going to sit down in a second. All right, I'm going to sit down in a second. All right, I'm going to sit down in a second. Now, about halfway through, I said, no, you know what? It's so good now. If I sit down, something's going to go wrong. And so I totally stood the whole time. It was just, oh my gosh, it was so good. My biggest issue, though, that made me laugh was, Baru and Lars had the high ground, and Reva came in there, and they both missed. You both had the high ground, and you both wound up out of commission, and she could have killed Luke. And I was like, okay, so 0 for 2.
That's right.
And then
we got to have a
lost Leia. Yeah, like Bail lost Leia, and so Obi-Wan's like, you each of you had one job, and now I got to fix both of them. Like, come on.
That's right. Parents coming in.
But I'll do it because I'm Obi-Wan and I can.
That's right. It totally works out.
So. It totally works.
Jeff, this has been so good to get to see you. We've got another caller hanging out, so we're going
Thank you for letting me on.
Send you on to your Friday night, of course. Always glad to see you, and thanks for coming on, and may the force be with you.
That was great. I always love hearing from Jeff. Jeff is a patron, so I'm going to use this opportunity to tell people about our Patreon program. Sorry, I'm always a marketer, always selling. For $3 a month or more, whatever you want to pay, at patreon.com/ATGcast, you get some free swag from us, and you will also be able to join us when we record Podcast of the Wills and Around the Galaxy with our special guests. Certain tiers give you different opportunities, including opportunities to actually meet some of the guests after the show. So, Jeff, thank you for being a patron, man. Thank you so much for being a part of the family. But let's talk to somebody else who's been part of the family way back before
a long time. And
before
let's
I've even
just
known
even
you.
say this. That's right. And let's just say this. We are crossing international borders. And there is a history here. And I'm so glad that this person is joining us, because I have heard stories and I have witnessed on occasion the struggles of Canadian internet. But I'm feeling good right now that this is going to be a good night. So I can't wait to get Danny in here. So let's do that.
All right, here she is. Danny.
Hey guys.
How
What's
are you?
up, Danny?
Oh, man, your internet looks
good.
much better than Jerry Cable's ever did. Amazing.
How are you guys doing?
How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Busy, tired, glad it's Friday.
Yeah,
I can totally appreciate all of that. Danny, we got an Obi-Wan Kenobi series, not a show, not a movie. We got an entire series, 6 episodes of goodness, top to bottom. Give us your thoughts. What worked for you? Was there anything that didn't work? We're allowed to be constructively critical, but tell me your thoughts on Obi-Wan.
Well, I have to be honest. Starting at the beginning, I just to go back a little bit. I don't know if I was super wild about the Book of Boba Fett.
Sure.
So I was starting to get a little jaded by not jaded, but kind of, I was starting to get like a little bit worried about dipping into lore, dipping into kind of like established characters or whatever.
Absolutely.
That said, I thought they pulled it out magnificently. I thought the writing was just incredible. The acting was incredible. I mean, there was a few times during the season where I was like, whoa. And the thing that got me the most, and it was most obvious in the last episode, and I tweeted about this, but I'll restate it here, is this is an interesting show to watch because we know the outcome. It's a low stakes game. We know Owen and Beru survive. We know Luke survives. We know Leia survives. We know Vader survives. We know Obi-Wan survives. Like, there's no one dying. When Luke was in it, we know he's living.
Right.
Which almost feels like a really freeing thing, because that leaves you so much room to tell real personal stories. You don't have to sell the sensationalism of, are they going to die? Who's in jeopardy? Like, you get to flesh out characters, which I think this did.
But what it did was it allowed these characters that we had only seen for a few minutes in the original trilogy. Well, I mean, obviously not Luke and Leia, but other characters like Owen and Beru. It allowed them to breathe. It gave their stories depth. It gave their characters depth.
Yep.
And I mean,
so much.
like, Beru is this nice, loving aunt. In this episode, she's Ram-Beru, for crying out loud.
Ram-Beru.
Hashtag
Ram-Beru.
Yeah, when she whips out that gun, I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah, and maybe one of my top 5 or 10 moments in the entire series is when she says to Owen something about Ben, and he goes, Ben is gone. And she goes, whose fault is that?
Yeah.
Like, immediately she was like, good, got it. We're on it.
And it was great. I am going to say that I've heard, talk about, like, should there be a second season? This is a weird thing where, for the first time, and like, me, I'm always like, give me more Star Wars.
Sure.
Yep.
This is the first time where I'm kind of like, no, just stop it here. It ended perfectly. I don't want to give any reason for people to say, oh, well, any potential that you're going to like start pissing off like fanboys more than you already are. It's like, I don't know. It felt like it ended absolutely 1000% perfect. And I don't want to tarnish that. It's like, I love this series from beginning to end. Let's just stop. I don't need more. I don't need more. Now, do I want more Vader? You bet your sweet ass I do.
We all do.
Like, I want more Vader, but I don't necessarily need to have it in this context.
But you make a great point, and I'm with you. I was, my biggest concern going into this episode was that they may have changed something to give us a second season instead of closing it up. But clearly, they closed it all up. There were no dangling sort of plot points that they sort of left to go. And honestly, some people are saying, well, let's see Obi-Wan learn about how to commune with the Force. And that, no, I don't think we need it. Honestly, I think we're okay. I think
I don't want that, because I don't want I want the mystique of the Force to still be a mystique.
Yes. Yep.
Like, I don't need every single freaking I dotted and T crossed in Star Wars. Sometimes it's okay to just leave me guessing a little bit.
100%.
That's right.
100%. And I think that's
it's one of those. Go ahead, Pete. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that it's one of those things that this show did so well was make all the. I think we all anybody who's a sweaty
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars nerd like us, we all walked in. We're like, okay, there's so much opportunity to drop the ball on this. There's so much opportunity to break canon, to make us look at things in different ways and in not a positive way. But it all worked, and I think that is a credit to Deborah Chow and to Joby Harold and the writing team.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much care given to making sure that all these connections were made, and in a way that didn't feel shoehorned. Because how many shows have we seen where you're like, oh yeah, we'll shove this in there and it'll work? None of that felt like it was shoehorned at all, which was pretty amazing. So,
and I do have actually kind of one more thing to kind of, because you know me, Pete, you know my story maybe more than other people do, like how I came into the fandom.
Yep.
Was through The Force Awakens. That was my gateway drug. I had just, come off some pretty devastating news in my personal life, and that's when I clung in, and that was my gateway in. Everything I look at kind of comes through that lens of The Force Awakens and the sequel trilogy. So there's two sort of things that I loved and kind of things that I'm kind of like, maybe. And number one was, I love the fact that we saw now Leia twice, not having hope that Ben would come back, but two different Bens.
Right.
Oh,
you never lost that hope that Ben's would come back,
I love that. That's great.
Yeah. And the other thing is that, like, you kind of saw, I'm telling you, I want Rey somehow, some goddamn way, maybe through her mother, maybe, Obi-Wan's her uncle, because apparently Obi-Wan has a younger brother, which I think Cal Kestis, but but yes. I want Rey to somehow be a Kenobi, because the parallels between Obi-Wan and Rey this entire series was unbelievable. Like that whole lifting rock scene was just like,
for sure.
And I'm like, okay, we know that she's a Palpatine through her father, but what do we know about her mother? And then I'm like, I thought, like, was it deliberate that he made a point in episode 2 or 3 to make a point that he had a younger brother? Was that like a little bon mot that they're going to explore later? Cal Kestis. But
well, I want to see,
and he doesn't know who his brother is, so that's why I think it's Cal Kestis.
I didn't even think of that.
At least you don't have an agenda, Danny. That's a good
thing. Like I'm not necessarily saying, like, Rey should be like the grand, Satine and blah 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 and the grandson. Or I think if they were going to explore that, they would have explored that. But good absolutely. God, I want them to be related somehow, maybe through the younger brother, Cal Kestis.
There you go.
I'm creating new conspiracy theories now.
Hey, conspiracy theories are just a step away from fan fiction, Danny, and so I think that's right. Okay.
it totally works. Danny, it's so good to get to see your face and hear your voice. Yeah. And again, I'm very proud of the infrastructural work that Canadian internet has been doing since the last time I saw you. This is a good appearance. So it's good to see you. Thank you for popping in with us tonight, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Friday.
Yeah, you betcha. And Cal Kestis is a Kenobi.
See you, Danny.
Bye-bye.
I love her. She's the best. I've told the story before. The first time I knew that my podcast was starting to catch on was she posted a picture from a Starbucks in Canada and her phone listening to my show. And I was like, my goodness, people actually do listen to the show. It's pretty wild.
Do this. It's so crazy.
People do this.
Well, speaking of crazy, not that crazy, but exciting. We have another caller on the line, and this is a new caller for us, Pete. This is not somebody that I recognize that we've had on before. So let's hit the thing and let's get in danotube.com.
Hey guys, what's up?
How are you?
Well, hello there.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. This is awesome.
Welcome to the show, man. It's nice to get somebody new and somebody.
Thanks.
So what's your your gut reaction to that first viewing of Kenobi?
Well, I have some questions. I'm utterly confused about why Reva wanted to kill Luke. Maybe you guys can help me out with that.
I think that's a great question, because I've been trying to figure that one out myself, because I guess so in my notes for my own sort of personal takeaway is what's next for Reva. And the question too is, did she know who Luke was? Did she put 2 and 2 together? So I think the only answer I have, and Nick, I want to hear your thoughts as well. Yeah. It's just, connected somehow to Obi-Wan, and she knew a way to get to him because she knew about Owen and Tatooine. Of course, that implies that there's only one person on Tatooine named Owen. So, but again, it is Star Wars. Explosions happen in space, and so we need to just become
and everything circles around Tatooine. So
correct. Right.
I think, and I like that question, and I have thought about it briefly, but not as much as I probably should have. I think for me, and I think the telling line is when she breaks down and she says, "I couldn't do it." She's still clinging on to trying to figure out a way to get to Vader. She failed in the battle with him in episode 5. He left her. He stabbed her. She didn't succeed at the one thing she wanted, which was this vengeance. So somehow she thought, because she saw the message, if she could get to Tatooine, whatever this kid is, maybe somehow she could still get to where she was. But she was already teetering on that point of failure. And I think whatever reason she wanted to get to Luke had something to do with one last ditch effort to try and get to Vader, and she failed. So she breaks down to Obi-Wan. I couldn't do it. I'm a failure. That's how I read it.
If she had killed him, though, like a what if scenario, and then she tells Vader, you know, that kid you thought was already dead, well, he's actually really dead still.
Yeah,
but for real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I did it, and I win, right? Yeah,
yeah, a way to win.
What was your?
And he's and then Vader might have been like, "Oh, thank you," because he might have been a huge threat to me, which is probably why Obi-Wan was hiding him in the first place. So thank you for killing him.
Thank you, and I'm still going to try to kill you again because I'm Darth Vader. So what was your overall take on Reva's arc?
It's like it was overly telegraphed. I felt like they could have done really well with something we hadn't seen it coming a mile away, because they set up at the very first scene is her already being a Padawan, and so you kind of know that there's a reason they're showing us this.
Sure.
So I don't know. It wasn't very surprising. It was just like eventually it happened, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
There's the thing. Right.
But then the Luke thing was a little bit weird, so I was just confused about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to go back to your...
And it's like we don't know her motivation to want to kill him, so I don't really understand her motivation to then not want to kill him either.
Sure.
I wanted to see her flying with the lightsaber, though, too. I think we missed out on that one.
I definitely think we missed.
Sabers. What the heck?
I'll
that's
tell you,
standard inquisitorious kind of deal.
And I think Reva's character had a very interesting arc, but I do feel, again, this is not a how I would write it type of show. But since we don't know what happened to her, we do know that, revenge keeps dark side people alive.
You're right.
The revenge is over. What happened to her? Did she? I in my head canon, she didn't make it much further than that, and that was which I think is okay. She then dies redeemed, and that's a classic Star Wars.
I mean, but how is she gonna die? She survived getting stabbed through the chest twice. What's gonna kill her?
The only person who's ever been killed by a lightsaber through the torso is Qui-Gon Jinn. So
yeah, that's right. He's the only one that couldn't come back from that. Everybody else seems to be doing fine.
So, yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thanks for jumping in with us tonight. We loved hearing that.
Oh, sure.
I love thinking about that question because, again, that's another one of those things that it peaked for a minute, and then with everything else that we got in the episode, it kind of got shuffled back to the back. So I'll probably end up reflecting on that later tonight, too.
One little funny point I want to add. Remember when Obi-Wan gets back to Alderaan, and Leia sees him, and she's like, you see excitement on her face. And I was like, oh, she's glad to see Obi-Wan. And then she yells the little robot's name and goes after the robot.
I thought that was
Jesus.
wonderful.
That's very, very classic. That's a kid move. I have kids.
This dude saved your life.
Yeah, I can see my kids.
But you brought me a surprise. That's way better than you.
My puppy.
Oh, you brought me a present. Yeah, that's it.
Exactly. There you go.
All right, guys. You have a good one.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much.
Have a great one.
Peace.
Peace. I love getting other people's perspectives. We have a lot of, and we love the fact that we have so many of our friends joining us all the time. But Dano is he's new. That's great. I'm excited.
I love hearing new voices. Speaking of voices,
yes,
we have another caller on the line.
Yes.
This is a gentleman that you and I are both familiar with. Is a friend of ours. When I say voice, I mean he worked in radio. He has a radio voice. And there may be this buzzword that floats around him and in his aura, the word tapestry.
Tapestry.
But this is a man who has deep thoughts and is good at explaining things. So this is one of the voices I'm glad we get to hear tonight as we talk about this Kenobi finale. So let's get Alden Diaz in here.
Awesome. Alden, how you doing, man? So good to see you.
Hello, making my streaming Star Wars debut.
Absolutely.
Great to be here. I got to be 100% honest. You guys need to know the backstory of how I ended up here. It's a short backstory. I get a text from Scott Giroux from the
F. Scott J-Row, as I like to call
Scott
him.
Giroux. Yeah.
No, it's not, we usually
Henry
do say
David
F,
Giroux.
we usually do say F. Scott J-Row.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
and
whole
so-
different context, though.
He sends me a text that says, "It's been a hard day. You know, it's been a
Yeah.
very stressful day, and
Some stuff going
the
on.
country. Yeah, and I've been throwing myself into content and work. This is the fifth thing I've been on the mic for today.
You're a
Hi,
machine.
Danny. Hi, Chris. And I did a Game of Thrones podcast. I did my own Star Wars podcast. Been popping around, just wanting to stay busy and distracted.
Yeah.
And Scotty sends me a text with a link that says, "Need another distraction?" ? And if you know this man, that's a risky click. That could be anything.
Right. You don't know.
That could be
Figure out.
anything. So I was texting him. I was like, I want you to know that I love and trust you, because I clicked that without really hesitating. And I they could have brought me into like a
Could have been
adult
anywhere.
triple X stream or something. Like, who knows what could have happened. So then after he said, "Oh, it's Pete and Nick," I said, "Okay, thank God."
Yeah, it's a couple of old dads drinking whiskey and talking Star Wars. It's as
Yeah.
good as it gets.
Yeah. So were you guys
Alden.
are you talking Reva? I heard while I was in the waiting room. there.
Kenobi finale thoughts. What do you got? Where did the tapestry lead you on this one?
The tapestry on this one is so rich. I think there's so much that's like really overt, but also some stuff that's like really subtle. I just posted a whole classic me thread about the choreography and how I think that there's Qui-Gon and Kylo Ren in the actual final battle, which I think is fascinating. I love Star Wars choreography. Ever since Twin Sons, I always think about, why is Obi-Wan moving the way he is? Because the Twin Sons ones are so specific and
Yes.
important.
Mm-hmm.
But then also in terms of the sort of things that are there, not because canon was broken, but things that are like, if you were concerned about this, here you go. If you've ever been concerned about Darth as a him referring to Darth, we got you covered. If you love this Leia relationship, but you're wondering, well, why is her message so formal then?
Right.
He says, we need to keep this secret. No one can know
Yes.
about this
Right.
adventure.
Mhm.
There's little things like that that just really preserve the story. Luke never seeing a blade,
Yes,
him already
so good.
being half out by the time she comes in
Yep.
the room. Like, they're very, very precise about all that.
Yes.
And I thought that, I loved Reva's arc. I loved Obi's arc. I thought it was all, this is, I think, the episode of Star Wars live action TV for sure.
Yeah.
This is the one.
So
agree.
I actually, it's funny that you popped on, because I referenced you earlier today talking about how you and a couple other people referenced this as sort of episode 3.5. I called it sort of an epilogue to the prequels that brings us into the next set, because it really kind of brought the bigger story to a personal level. But let's I want to throw this question at you, because I don't have an answer, and it's Reva related, and I know you and I are both fans of the Reva arc. What do you think happens to her, and does she actually know that Luke is Vader's child, or is it just some piece of vengeance? What's your headcanon on this? And we all know headcanon is deadly, but I'd love to hear your perspective on it.
I'm so glad you asked, because thanks to somebody else asking me, I have a bulleted list of why Reva is there. I just scrolled to get it out of a chat I was in, because somebody said, "Alden, can you explain the Reva arc?" And I said, or at least the Reva ending. Why is she there? Does she know that? Does she have an inkling that this is a child of Vader? What does she know? What doesn't she know? Is there now someone out there that knows the truth about the twins? And the answer to that is no. She doesn't know who these twins are. And so what I wrote here, she has these pieces of info. Owen has a child on that farm. He references his family in part 1. She's very suspicious of him in part 1. Even separately from Nari, who they're hunting, she says, "You're hiding someone. Is there a Jedi on that farm?" So Owen's already on the top of her list.
He's
just
a suspect,
not priority enough to pursue at the moment.
Yep.
She knows that this senator, Bale, and Obi worked together intimately, knew each other enough that he would chase after Bale's daughter. And he was right. It is also public knowledge that Bale's kid is adopted. Maybe that plays a little bit into her mentality too once she starts to get suspicious, because she sees Obi running around with this girl, and then she sees this message, and it's broken up, but she gets the pieces that are Owen, if he knows about the children, I think the boy are the 3 pieces that she gets. So at this point, I wrote with this info, in conclusion, I believe she's aiming to kill Luke because it's A, somehow important to Vader, B, evidently important to Obi, C, in her mind probably goes back a long time to some sort of intimate thing with all these men because of Bale. And I think she's trying to kill Luke, not because maybe she's assuming that they're related, but it'll just hurt everyone involved.
Right.
And I think that the key element of why kill Luke is, how do I hurt Anakin and Obi-Wan at this point in a way that also emphasizes what I think? And if I'm her, what I think is what she said at the gate in chapter 5. Where were you? You trained him, and then you weren't there to save us. So now you're not going to be there to save this kid either, and I'm going to prove that you're a failure.
Right. I'm
going to prove, and once again, I'm going to kill this kid, and then I'm going to ask you again, where were you? But then she can't do it because X, Y, and Z. She sees herself. She realizes you become what you hate. So that's my whole thing. Like, I'm sure, like, it's extrapolating the info, and it's also like dark side rage. She's got a mortal wound, or at least it seemed mortal. I'm sure Obi-Wan probably healed her or something.
So let me ask a question about the mortal wound just for a second, because, and this could be a dumb question, I've heard it, kind of talked about a couple of different ways. We know Vader stabs her in that scene in episode 5. We get the flashback to when she's a youngling in the temple, Order 66, and we also get the blue saber light up. It appears that she gets stabbed, but she also talks about just playing dead and hiding among the bodies and feeling them go cold. Was she really stabbed as a youngling? Because I interpreted that as her drawing a parallel to those 2 moments, but I don't know if I ever got it communicated to me fully that she was actually stabbed as a youngling. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I don't think they explicitly say. I interpreted it as she was. Because I think it makes it more just sad for me as a viewer. But also I think it's horribly tragic if she was, because what do we know about surviving something like that? It takes the utmost of hate. Like it's like Darth Maul level hate to survive something like that. Grand Inquisitor as well.
Comparison.
Yeah, and all these people, except Dooku, because there's just no coming back from that. Palpatine, Maul, Grand Inquisitor, Vader burning alive. They've all been able to tap into a level of rage that has pushed them through it. So I love the idea. I don't love the idea, but I am horrified and loved on a cinematic level of the idea of a little girl with a hole in her gut sitting there writhing in anger with her dead friends around her.
Okay. And that's what turns her dark.
All those things. I think it's all those things. I think that she was probably the first like 10-year-old legitimate dark side user. I would not be surprised if she left. Like if they ever do like the Reva novel, like a YA novel or a 6-issue comic or something, I would not be surprised if she turned into like a really like horrible kid, because she had to. Like I could see her finding somebody that would tend to her wound and then killing them for food or something. Like it's like a horrible life.
It's that survival thing. And I love, and Pete, you commented on this earlier, we give the list of all the people stabbed: Reva, Grand Inquisitor, Queen Inquisitor, Ben Solo, Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon was the only one without a revenge motive, and that was the point that you put in the chat. Again, he wasn't driven by rage. Like he was Zen. He just died because he was mortally wounded without, as the Grand Inquisitor said, that drive to,
you're too at peace
to keep you alive. Yeah.
Right. And that's the difference. Is that they hold on to the physical form. That's why you have someone like Sheev end up being a rotting corpse on a meat hook, because they can't
over and over again.
They can't change. They can't let go. They would rather be a big trash spider like Maul, or they'd rather end up like Palpatine. They'd rather be any of those things than just die. Whereas Qui-Gon is able to not want revenge because he's with his metaphorical son, or at least little brother, and Obi-Wan. He gets to die in the arms of somebody that he loves, trusting them with the future. That's why, light side users aren't able to do that. Not that they can't ever. I'm sure that somebody would. But yeah, I think that it adds up. It requires, I think, a little bit of like, well, what works for you? But like you and I have texted about that, Nick, of like, sometimes what works for you is just kind of like the point.
Right. That's right. It is. Yep. In fact, I was peeked behind the curtain. I was blowing Alden up at like 1:00 in the morning late last week because we were both just awake and talking about Star Wars because that's what we do. Those are the people that
I can't remember what got us on that track, but I think that the ending thesis. You don't swear on this show, right?
No, we do. It's fine.
Oh, okay. The ending thesis was how does the dark side cave work on Dagobah? Who gives a fuck? It's just the fact that it's just like, what did he see? That's what matters. It doesn't. I don't need to know how the rocks and the moss in the cave produce.
It was the show don't tell. The show don't tell was what started the thread when I texted you and was just like, this is what's going in my head. We don't have to explain it all. Sometimes we just do it.
Sometimes it just happens.
Alden, it's so good to see you. It's so good to have you pop in and have this first streaming Star Wars experience. We hope we will see you again sometime very soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got another caller on the line. Somebody that just deals with everybody. You know where this is headed, but it's time. Everybody, equal time on streaming Star Wars. So that's where we're headed.
Have fun with him.
Thanks, Alden.
Hello.
You can see
what do you think going on back here?
Yeah, what is happening back there?
Are you under construction, Scotty?
Yeah, it's the line. Hello, third. And then y'all.
Hello. Hello.
No, the new one now is this. The new one is this. It's this. It's
Oh, yes.
I was dying.
When he says we should go after all of them. No, Kenobi's all that matters.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Like, if we don't get more Rupert Friend as the Grand Inquisitor, I mean, like, there is just so much. Danny, I saw you earlier. You're wonderful. JD, look at all these people. They all love me.
It's the Scotty
and Jared still lost to me in trivia, so we're doing good. So,
but you know, the point that I made on Twitter about Rupert Friend was, if you had any issue with the Grand Inquisitor and the way Rupert portrayed him, it all went out the window. And somebody else was saying, I don't know if it was Kristen Baver or somebody was saying that only somebody who something about the fact that he was actually like out of focus and he still stole that moment. Exactly. But just like, and we've all been there. We've all had a parent or a boss who does something and we're just like, really? Whatever. Yeah.
And it was so, but
the Grand Inquisitor is the eye roll personified.
Yes. But the thing is, like, you almost get why he's frustrated, because they could literally stop the path if they just took over that ship. And you got Vader's headstrongness still just there, and that's what leads him to even getting his butt whipped. Because I'm sure the Grand Inquisitor was like, "Oh wow, that happened to you? Oh, what a shame!" The second he got back on that ship, it's awesome.
I wonder. So that brings up a really interesting thought that I've had about this show, and that is, so the question, I think even again, James Bainey said this when we had TRB on a couple weeks ago. What's the purpose of this show? And I think the purpose of this show, as I said before, is kind of an epilogue of the prequels. But more importantly, the role that it plays to me is it solidifies all, because honestly, Darth Vader made some dumb choices. Like, I didn't quite understand, not in the show, but broadly, right? I didn't understand what made him so terrible, all these things, because I don't read the comic books, but I do know that the comics have some pretty extreme Vader stuff, but that's stuff you don't see on screen. But this show made you realize that and we didn't even talk about the duel, the smile that Hayden Christensen puts on when he says, Vader, you didn't kill Anakin, or I did. The smile it's Joker level, like, creepy
Unreal.
and
Yeah.
evil. And
It's
you
so good.
realize at that moment that yes, Vader, we all kind of
Two
were like,
separate
a certain
people.
point of view. Vader did kill Anakin, and Anakin let himself be killed by Vader. And that's the other part of this that's so
And it gives
deep.
so much power to Ben in his hut with Luke in 4 when he says a Jedi, whatever he says, named Darth Vader betrayed and murdered your father.
Yep.
And
So
that's
young
true.
Jedi
Every
named
drop
Darth
of weight,
Vader.
every drop of person who comes back and goes, but this doesn't make sense. This is where that came from. This is why that works. And I just wanted to bring your point about comics in. Vader done some dumb stuff. He got his butt kicked. Of course, this does also answer when we last met, I was the learner, now I am the master.
Yep.
Because he got his ass kicked on whatever that
Again.
unnamed moon was.
I love it.
In the comic books, Pete, like you referenced, and I haven't read them either, but I've seen enough, images that people have posted and heard people talk about it. Like in the comic books repeatedly, Vader is doing stuff driven by this blind rage for Obi-Wan and then getting smacked by the Emperor, just like he does at the end of this episode when he says, if you aren't willing to let this go. And so he gives that moment of pledging allegiance and saying, it's only you, I only serve you, my master. And figuring out, okay, so this is why he stops chasing Obi-Wan, because that's the question that everybody had at the end of the series. Well, why would he just stop? Because the Emperor smacked his hand and said, it's me or him. What are you going to do?
Again, it's brilliant writing.
Exactly.
They didn't leave any.
they
Every
didn't.
question you have, there's an answer to.
And it's brilliant too, because you got to think about it. If he had kept pursuing Obi-Wan, he may have turned way earlier.
Correct.
I mean that. Like you get a
He was
character
vulnerable. He
like
was
Vader.
vulnerable.
Yeah, he was vulnerable even in that moment. One of the best parts of the whole moment with the mask being half cut off was the line where he goes, "Master," he was very enduring. Like, it wasn't, you don't need to be sorry about something. No, what was the exact phrasing? Damn it. When I see Pete's pretty face, I forget things. Shit.
Happens to all
He
of
does say something to the effect of like, don't be sad. It's all okay. I had to kill him. And I'm like, my God, like you have Hayden Christensen, who was hated for so long for being a not so good actor in the prequels, but that's an argument to be had. But you look at him now and like Deborah Chow pulled so much of a performance out of him, and even acting halfway behind a mask with 2 different color light. I mean, like, who would have ever thought, And Pete, I know you saw most of those at the premieres and stuff, and you and Nick obviously grew up at a different time than I did, where I didn't know that was a thing. And how does it feel now knowing that we get like a return, of Hayden Christensen in this capacity? How did y'all feel about seeing that scene is what I'm saying? Because that must have been insane for y'all. I mean that.
Well, one of the things I've talked about a couple times during this series on this show is the connection for me for the first time between Hayden Christensen's Anakin and Darth Vader, right? And for me, for years and years and years, it was Man in Suit and Hayden Christensen, 2 completely different characters. This series brought that to life. Watching him walk through the streets of Mapuzo as a killing machine, that was Anakin. Because of, again, probably because of Clone Wars as well, because we've seen him. When you go back and you watch Clone Wars now, and you realize like when Anakin just killed a guy because to save the day, where you had Obi-Wan who literally could have ended Vader, but left him again to die. Left him again to die twice.
He hasn't learned that. Not that he hasn't learned that lesson. It's the difference in the dark and the light.
Right.
It's the difference in what mercy looks like, or even not even mercy, but letting the will of the Force sort it out. If Obi-Wan leaves and Anakin dies there because of what he did to him, then that's the will of the Force.
Yeah.
But it wasn't Obi-Wan's decision to make. It was Obi-Wan. He did what he did, and it was time to walk away. There's a lot of power in that.
This is the line. Yeah, I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan. Like, that's Anakin. Like, through and through Anakin. That's not even Vader at that point. Because it's true. And you've got the moment, and I think one of the best parts of the whole fight was the voice, changing from Vader to him.
Oh my gosh.
And talk about, like, obviously there's some iconic things in Star Wars. As of recent history, I would say one of the best and biggest iconic moments is obviously when Grogu and Din first meet, or when Rey goes down the sand dune. But like that overhead shot of Obi-Wan and like the voice, oh my God, I'm like
big Maul vibes right there.
Yes, I've watched this episode 4 times now, and like I love the idea of like that is a huge part of Star Wars now. You get to see like this really interesting, perspective of a truly broken character, and the voice cracking and all of it. I mean, it's just, God, we're lucky. I don't know. That's all I can say about this.
So let me bring up your point about Obi-Wan, the line from Maul in Rebels, because people are talking about how this has impacted the OT and the PT and everything is, there's those connections. But do what I did just, I guess it was yesterday. Watch the Twilight of the Apprentice episodes again. Never mind the fact that, so first of all, a lot of people not a lot of people, but some people were saying, oh, they did the half a helmet in Twilight of the Apprentice. It's been done before. First of all, 90% of the Star Wars fan base has not watched Rebels. Sorry to say it, but it's true. So they've never seen it. Second of all, when you watch that again now, this is what I love about this series. I watched it, and I want to hear from people. Go to Twitter after you do it. Go to Twitter and at me and tell me what you think. You watch it now, and you realize Ahsoka had zero chance of saving him, zero, because he was so far gone. When we watched it a couple years ago when it first hit, there was always that sort of hope that she might be able to, reach it. We knew she didn't, because we knew where Vader went. But there was always sort of this hope that she could reach him. But now we look at it from Vader's perspective, and he's so far gone. He's toying with her. She has no shot at all. Right. And that to me, again, that's the power of this show, is it didn't change the canon. It didn't change the lore, but it improved it, and it gave you more insight to different parts of the show.
This is very superficial, but it ties into exactly that point. In Twilight of the Apprentice, it's the right side of Vader.
Yep.
When he gets hit, the broken mask is on the right side. In this one, it's the left side. And I think the first thing I texted to Pete, I don't know if it was to you too, Scotty, afterwards, when I watched it the first time, when Obi-Wan makes that hit, as an original trilogy kid, it's the Return of the Jedi scar that Sebastian Shaw had on the top of his head. And immediately you're like, that's where that came. Like, that's the first thing that hit for me. Yep. Again, tiny little things that fill out and expand and go, there's a history here. And there's a brutality here, which is also really powerful. Like Chase talked about it when he was on with me last week. I heard him talk about it with you guys on Skywalking 2 hours ago. When Obi-Wan is hitting Vader in the chest with the bottom side of that lightsaber over and over again. I was like, this is raw emotion. But what got me and what did it for me was Obi-Wan Kenobi stands up, arms spread, lightsaber in one hand, and all those boulders come up behind him, and he just starts drilling him. That was so good, because it was so not Obi-Wan, but as he said, as he faced off, "Are you here to kill me, Obi-Wan? I will do what I must."
Which he said in Revenge of the Sith,
which is what he also said in Revenge of the Sith.
It's the George line poetry. It rhymes, right? And it's funny, this time it literally rhymes, because the line that Anakin says in Revenge of the Sith was, "You will try," but in this one it's, "You will die." And like literally they did, and like you said earlier, Pete, you tributed everything that A New Hope set up and Revenge of the Sith set up. And I agree. Like it's so crazy, JD, because when I went into the show, I'm like, man, you're right. Is this something we really need to be able to, complete a journey? The journey already felt complete, but in some capacity, they did it even more. And like something even as small as the T16 model, right? Like you just found a way to work in so many little itty bitty moments. So long, Darth, like getting that chance to understand where Obi-Wan is at, in this versus where he was in Revenge of the Sith is just like, it's a beautiful thing. And I don't know, have y'all got to the very, very end yet? Because I love, who shows up at the very, very end. I don't know.
We're not going in any particular order. But before we go there, I do want to, you mentioned the Darth thing. And I think to me is my favorite retcon of this entire thing.
Yes.
Because a lot of, and I was one of them. I actually have a video where I talk about it, where like Darth Vader's name was Darth Vader, Scott J-Ro, Nick Milky. Like that was his name in the, but now it's just, it's a now it's a title, but the way he does it here, it works on so many levels, because he says he's not calling him Anakin. He's just like, all right, you're not Anakin anymore. You're Darth. And secondly, the way I took it, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this, is you're just another Darth, right? There's been 1,000 Darths throughout the
Sidious, Maul, Revan.
You're just Darth.
Yeah.
See you later, Darth. And then when he sees him again 10 years later, he's like, only Master of Evil, generic Sith guy.
Only,
you know?
Only a Master of Evil. Darth.
Because you're not a Jedi Master, are you? Because you couldn't make the council. Yep.
It's Kenobi shade, which is another one. And I mean this. One of the things I've said for a long time, because of course part of my brand apparently is like having drinks. I love so much that Obi-Wan Kenobi is like, hey, you go do with this. Well, what are you going to do, Master? I'm going to go to the bar and have a drink.
Yeah, I'm going to
in Attack of the Clones, in Mos Eisley Cantina, in these various times. Like Obi-Wan's that guy. Like he's a little bit all of us. He's a little bit petty. He's a little bit like snarky. The mustache rub as he's sitting there going, I'm going to say something smart ass to you. And that Darth drop is so good and hits just like that.
Yep, and that's true. And part of it I think is an insult as well. It is definitely an insult, like not just because there's more than one Darth, just like Brian said, but part of it does come down to the fact that he would call him Anakin, he would call him, that was his first name, and to call him by anything else, that's almost you acknowledging that name means nothing. Calling him Darth is just, it's so well done, y'all. It's so well done.
Well, Scotty, what did you want to talk about with let's wrap up our Kenobi talk with you talking about the Phantom Menace connection, man.
See, look, this is part of it. And I don't mean to be this person because, people change, obviously, but you still got a sect of the fandom or even super casual that, hate the prequels for whatever reason.
Yep.
But this show wouldn't have existed without those three movies, And obviously Ewan McGregor was probably the most desired part of the prequels. And I've really thought about this a lot in the past couple of days, but to have that moment where Qui-Gon gets to come back almost is kind of like you remember this guy? And if you don't remember him that well, go watch The Phantom Menace. And then that movie's going to make so much more sense now that you've seen this whole series and everything else preceding it. Or I guess following it. That moment of took you long enough is amazing.
Yeah.
Because it's not only a quippy line, but also part of it, at least to me personally, is yes, you haven't been Obi-Wan. You weren't that same, apprentice that, had to hold me in his arms when I died, right? And you haven't been that guy in 10 years. And it took 10 years for that awakening to occur. And then he finally presents himself in the desert to Tatooine. And I think the most comforting part of all that is that they have a conversation on the walk through that canyon and we don't see it. And we know it happens. And now that he has matured enough and gone through enough for him to be able to, talk to Qui-Gon is just so well done. And Liam Neeson looked great. And they even did the most subtle thing. They did the length of hair difference.
It's too different.
So
I noticed it.
Well, and they found Liam's wig. They did it.
They found the wig.
But honestly, it's amazing, but it's not surprising because this show took so much care with absolutely every detail, everything.
Yep.
There was nothing that was left untaken care of. And the reality is we were working in the volume. There were some scenes, there's some shots that I'll say felt like, okay, yep, that's in the volume.
Yeah, I agree.
There were some things, some CG space shots, whatever. But the story was there and the care that was given to this show. And what I love is reading things about Hayden going back and watching Rebels and Clone Wars. And you could tell that there was love for these characters. And we talked a lot about it when we were all together at Star Wars Celebration because Ewan brought it up. We did these movies and they weren't well received, reminding people they weren't well received. And this connection to Qui-Gon the connection to the Phantom Menace. This is the first time there's been any Phantom Menace reference other than the quick shot of Anakin at the beginning. This is the first time that the Disney Star Wars era, rather, because I hate that phrase, Disney Star Wars, but the Disney Star Wars era has really full on pulled the Phantom Menace into what they're doing.
God, it's awesome. And also the best line was, "We'll ever see you again." And that's what sent me through the roof.
Yes.
Because it's literally what Anakin says to Shmi. And you're like, wow, that's
what does your heart
same
tell
10-year-old says that to her, her mentor essentially. And what does your heart tell you? y'all, it's such a special time. And I said this earlier on Skywalking, but I want to reiterate it right now. It took like 7 years for this project to even come to fruition. You know, obviously it had been in the works when the acquisition had occurred, and there was like rewrites and COVID delayed it, and then other writers came in, and you can tell with just the credits alone, there was like 6 people that worked on this project, and for it to actually get made is a miracle, number one, but also for it to be truly some of the best Star Wars storytelling. And I love my sequel trilogy, and you really can't touch movies and TV, but like this was just like phenomenal, super cohesive, super well done. And I don't know, it was a love letter to your all's generation and a love letter to my generation. And I can't believe they pulled it off.
And I think I said it, and I don't know if you caught it at the very, very beginning, but I think to me, the way I've described it the best is it was the bridge. This series has been the bridge from the prequel trilogy to OT kids like Pete and I. Like it connected up. You know, I've grown to appreciate the prequels way more in the last 10 years as I've become an adult, as I've learned to appreciate, you know, not being an asshole more, you know, all those different things. But
you're still an asshole, Nick.
And that's fine.
But a well-meaning asshole. Yes.
And I'm your asshole, so you're stuck with me, so it's fine. But it really also does just connect and flesh out the connecting points between those stories. Clone Wars season 7 did a lot of that for me. Because I very famously have said, wasn't a huge Clone Wars guy. I kind of visited it to catch different arcs, to catch different things, to figure it out along the way. Season 7, especially those last 4 episodes, all in the tank. Like so good, did so much. And it's also because I love Rebels so much. And Rebels again does so much for me. So to have the Rebels crossover, the prequels crossover, the connections to the OT, you know, there's so much in there. You know, Pete's just being Pete. It's fine.
It's fine.
We'll curse at each other way worse than this later.
That's right. Well, thank you for having me on, boys. I appreciate it. Seriously.
Dude, well, honestly, it feels a little bit like a do-over from last week when we had the disaster show, and neither one of us could make our stuff work. So
that's right. It's nice to actually have you both in your environment.
Yeah, where we're supposed to be.
That's right.
Well, great. Well, Scotty, thank you so much, man. May the force be with you. Great callers tonight. Thank you to everybody who's been hanging out with us. And first of all, we've had a full house of the chat the entire night. And you guys, I've been watching it. If you're watching the video version of this, you'll see me looking off to the side quite a bit because I've been watching this chat going crazy.
Yeah, and I do the same thing, just checking it out. Well, we've had a packed show, and we're not done, Pete.
We're not done yet.
We've got another thing that I do, and I even texted you kind of separately as we look aside, peek behind the curtain. We've talked this week. We've got another bad takes in brown liquor, and you have written up something that I really think is important, and I would love for you to share. So we're going to do that, and after that, then we'll start to kind of finally put a bow on this. But I'm so thankful for our friends are hanging out, and I hope y'all will hang out for the next few minutes because we've got some more good stuff to share.
Cool. Well, as we say on the ATG Cast podcast stream all the time, we're living in a time of an embarrassment of riches when it comes to Star Wars content. Since Disney purchased Lucasfilm in 2012, we've gotten 5 theatrical movies, 4 seasons of live-action television, the final Clone Wars, and the first Bad Batch animated seasons, hundreds of comic books, dozens of novels, and 5 console and VR video games. And as we learned at Star Wars Celebration, there is no end in sight. The state of Star Wars is strong, despite what some of the naysayers may tell you. With every new media release that comes from Lucasfilm, there comes an onslaught of knee-jerk negative response. That is not to say that every piece of content since 2012 has been perfect, and ultimately that decision's in the eye of the beholder. What I might think is the ultimate Star Wars storytelling experience, you may find to be boring. What I may find to be against my ideal of what the franchise means, you may discover as the way you want to get Star Wars. It's all subjectives, and it's frustrating as a fan. The current media environment thrives on hot takes and clickbait. There's a rush to be the first one to find a nitpick or a plot hole and drive the traffic to the ad-laden website or a click to a YouTube commentary. And while some of the points are valid, a lot are simply designed to gain one of 2 reactions. Either they want to get you to say, yep, modern Star Wars sucks, or you're just being toxic. And yeah, I said it. A click on a YouTube video or an ad in a website doesn't care if you like what the content on the site says. If you're a Star Wars fan or not, if you agree with the point of view, it doesn't matter. Someone who supports the view of the site is as valuable as those that are offended by it. But that's the real problem. It doesn't matter how you got to an alleged critique. It only matters that you're there. The algorithm pays clicks and traffic, so getting you there is all they care about. And that's the business end of it. But there's more to it. It's also to the problems that are caused by driving traffic with bad takes. It's spawned literally an entire industry based on clickbait that a vast majority of people don't even understand is rumor mongering, straight up lies, or political profiteering. A few weeks before Star Wars Celebration, my father was brushing up on his Star Wars knowledge. And as he was joining me and my son for the pilgrimage to Anaheim, he was going online looking for information. And he said to me, Pete, what is this about Pedro Pascal leaving his role as Din Djarin on The Mandalorian? I asked him, where did you hear that? That is completely untrue. And his reply made my heart sink. He said, some guy named Mike Zero or something. And I lost my mind. For those of you that are not aware, Mike Zero is a YouTuber that earns about $1,000 a month posting 9-minute videos about stories he has completely fabricated. In the last 2 days alone, he's posted 8 videos with such outlandish headlines as George Lucas now writing Obi-Wan Kenobi and Jon Favreau responds to Obi-Wan Kenobi finale breaking canon. If these were predicated on even the slightest fact, they may actually be interesting. But the problem is they're 100% false. The problem is Zero is not an expert content creator. In fact, his voice is monotone, his lighting sucks, and his delivery is the same every single time. But what he's an expert at is gaming the algorithm. If you go into an incognito tab in your search and you look in so that you have no alteration by your browser history, a search of Star Wars news in YouTube returns 2 of his videos in the top 10 results. What happens as a result is the average normal Star Wars fan is being fed utter bullshit and puts faith in it because a reliable source like YouTube has delivered it. Zero's fantasies about the civil war within Lucasfilm and creators being angry about other creators' stories becomes reality to the middle of the bell curve. They just want to find out what's new. And there is no disclaimer, no admission of bullshit, just collecting a check every month for literally creating entertainment journalism fan fiction. This creates a narrative that there are problems within the creators of one of your favorite franchises. This is then built upon by the next level of clickbait artists, the ones who are not making up news, but driving politics into this franchise. YouTube channels like Geeks and Gamers, Nerdrotic, and RK Outpost make about $5,000 a month with an onslaught of nonstop angry videos reminding people that the reason Star Wars isn't what you want it to be is because of woke politics or forced diversity or any other alt-right buzzword. They incite their radicalized fan base with videos with titles like Star Wars account bullies fans and Disney Star Wars attacks fans on social media. They hate you. They call their videos fair and honest criticism of a show or a movie, but they clutter those arguments with right-wing talking points. The issue here is that they have weaponized Star Wars fandom. They're providing talking points to their hundreds of thousands of fans who take these hate-fueled essays and use them as faux facts to take into places where fans are having enjoyable conversations about their favorite franchise. Now, if you follow me, you know that I don't love every film, episode, and novel that comes out. But I love having conversation with those that like the things that I don't, because that's what being a fan is all about. Understanding another fan's perspective is fun and it makes for interesting conversation. Fans of the clickbait hate sites enter these conversations without invitation and they don't engage in the conversation. They force their way in and pitch whatever they've just seen on their favorite YouTube channel. I can't tell you why. It seems like a rather sad way to exist. But I digress. I'm not here to talk about the ugliness that this brings or the vile comments that come from people who've been trained to spew hate by watching video essays instructing them to push back against people who are different or remind them to, make America great again. I'm talking about what it does to the fandom and fans. A declaration of enjoyment of a particular franchise and its latest content installment becomes a wary entry point into a potential battle zone. It creates a sense of defensiveness. If someone should disagree with you, how do you respond? Are you taking issue with my opinion as a fan or as a political opponent? And to be fair, Star Wars or any fantasy franchise, when it's done right, it's escapism and a departure from these very challenging political times we're currently facing. Most recently, Reva, the character played by Moses Ingram, was the center of attention by sites like Geeks and Gamers. Before the Obi-Wan Kenobi series even aired, they went online and said the show was going to be awful because they had heard rumors that she would be the center of the show. They barely concealed that their problem with it was that she was a black woman. Their attempt to make it a story issue was taking a stand that the show would be all about Reva and it would sideline the main characters, Obi-Wan and Anakin. Then, when the show dropped, they looked for the dreaded plot holes created by this black woman's character and said that she was ruining canon even before the series had aired its third of 6 episodes. When the show finished and it was proven that her screen time was less than a third of Obi-Wan's, their argument shifted to, quote, her character is pointless and had no reason to be on the show other than for forced diversity. Now, as pathetic, ugly, and frankly racist a position this is, I'm not here to fight it. I have a few other videos addressing that. You can probably find them on the channel here. But I'm here to show that the narrative was shifted from being about the show, and it armed fans who've decided they don't like Star Wars anymore because of what Disney has done as a parent company, because they were told by angry YouTubers to feel this way. And they took these arguments to the healthy conversations and tried to poison them. Now, this is a cycle, and try as you might to cleanse the timeline of these types of fans, they continue it. There's money in it, whether it comes from turning Star Wars into a sharp stick for political purposes or trying to poke holes in the story. It makes money for creators, and it makes social media a very hard place to be a Star Wars fan. And this has been the case for everything since The Force Awakens. The ability to drive traffic by bringing down the most popular franchises is the surest way to make money. Frankly, it's why ATG Cast here on YouTube doesn't do the numbers of Geeks and Gamers. Even the most popular, neutral, and positive leaning YouTube channel, Star Wars Explained, they do less monthly revenue than the medium-sized clickbait sites. Hate and hot takes sell, period. And the more Star Wars we get, the more these voices are going to be amplified. So what's the solution? Well, I don't have one for you, but I do have my own philosophy, and it does get me some pushback sometimes. My position is to call out the bullshit as I see it, use my, albeit small, voice to highlight the garbage sites to hopefully educate people on what's real and what's not. Elevate good content, knowing it will never rise above the din of the dim-witted in an effort to balance the playing field. It's a losing battle, but one that I feel is worth fighting. So until the YouTube channels and other sites stop monetizing clicks regardless of what it took to get them, the battle will rage. All you can do is be aware of what's real and what's not, and try to help others see it. Be the spark that lights the fire. Call out the lies, but most importantly, do your best to not let things that you know are fabricated for clicks impact your enjoyment of the galaxy far, far away. The very fact that every piece of content that Lucasfilm and Disney releases for the foreseeable future is guaranteed to attract this sliver of negativity for revenue, well, that's the surest sign that our favorite franchise is not going anywhere. The state of Star Wars is strong, so let's have some fun. There we go. That's it. Yeah, I think you're muted. I can't hear you. I see you speaking, but I can't hear you.
You do see me speaking. It's always weird when the video's up and it tells me I'm not muted, but then I am muted because the video's either way. I'm back, and JD has it exactly right. Hashtag spark of positivity.
Absolutely.
That's our goal. Our aim in this space is to be able to call out the nonsense, call out the grifters when we can.
Yep.
Remind people that there's more of us, which I think is really important. You know, and again, you talked about Star Wars Explained. They're levels and levels and levels above where we will, you know, maybe ever be. And it's just one of those things that, like, we want people to realize there's so much nonsense out there, but there's more of us, and that's what it is. And again, I'm going to run through them all right now. Danny, well said. TW McKay, well said. JD, well done. Brandon, well said. Benny, nicely put. William, Pete, claps. Like, it's one of those things that we deal with all the time. And I know, you know, you're so good about putting those moments up online on Twitter when, you know, some new nonsense happens, and you get pushback. You and I talked about this. You get pushback where somebody goes, well, you shouldn't give them a platform. Here's the reality. They already have the platform. You're not giving them anything they don't already have. What you're doing is saying, what are you really talking about? And you've been very transparent. You've said on multiple occasions, hey, come on around the galaxy and let's talk about this. Explain to me why you feel the way you do. And what have you gotten to every one of those invites?
I've not gotten a single one of them willing to come
Crickets.
on the show. Yep.
Because it's an empty shirt. It's not a real thing.
And, you know, and it is a challenge because I don't want, it's a percentage of my posting, but I do think it's important. I think it's important that people
Agreed.
know what's real and what's not, because I mean, look, most of the people who follow you and I, we're deep in it, but it's
Yeah.
reminding the people, I always think about the guy who I met at the county fair last year. He saw a Star Wars shirt and he was like, "Oh man, I love this site." I won't say which one it was. And I was very disappointed. We had a conversation.
Right.
I tried to explain it to him, and at the end of the day, we're not winning this fight because
Sure.
the algorithm will continue to pay off, but doesn't mean I'm just going to sit on the side and let it go, because that's
Star
to
Wars
me,
deserves better, and the fan
Yeah.
community deserves better.
yeah, I would say so.
Well, and I love, and again, you say it all the time. We say it all the time. We're kind of the same person. Your dad looking up stuff before Celebration, and Mike Zero. I get, the same thing from my dad. Oh,
Yeah.
what about this thing? And I'm like, where did you find that exactly? Like, let me help you understand why that's not even remotely real.
Yep.
But thank you for sharing that. I know that that's something that you and I talk about, but I also know that the ability to share those videos, is our part in all of us banding together to not give air to these people that just waste our time.
Yeah. Hey, sometimes you got to block it out with just a different video or something. I don't know.
Without a doubt.
So we are at the end of this conversation about Kenobi. We will be in full force when Andor comes, which is just, honestly, it's 2 months away.
Yeah.
July 1st is next week, and
Yep.
August 31st is Andor. We are, we don't have that long of a break, but
we're right there.
But we will be back with streaming Star Wars. We probably won't be every single week, but we will be coming back to talk about Star Wars news. A couple other things. One of the things we talked about was we've talked about my dad, and maybe we can get your dad to do it too, Nick. My dad was unaware of Rogue One, and I told him where it fits in this story, and he's going to watch it this weekend. Maybe you can get your dad to watch it.
All right, so here, I was going to say, here's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and do this.
Okay.
I'm going to get my dad to, because it's so funny.
And let us know in the chat if you want to see this, because this sounds cool.
This could be fun. We talked about this earlier in the week, or maybe even last week, when we were talking about future schedule. Now that Kenobi's over, what are we going to do?
Yep.
I was at my parents' apartment this morning, dropping off my youngest kid because my wife went out of town. I'm juggling 4 kids. Who has to be where? She was keeping the youngest one for a little. It was this whole thing. And they may be watching actually right now. So mom and dad, if you're watching, because I logged into my YouTube account on their TV, because they're like, we miss watching your podcast. And so it's the whole thing. They could be watching right now. But he said, well, now that Kenobi's over, what's next? And I said, well, there's the Cassian Andor show that premieres at the end of August.
Yeah.
And he just kind of looked at me and I said, Cassian Andor from Rogue One, he was the guy that was the spy in the show. And I know he's watched it, but there was not just enough of a recognition that there's a part of me that's going, does he get it completely? Does he, whatever. So I'm on board for this, and I will be calling him first thing in the morning to say, if you're willing, watch this thing, and it's going to be your dad, my dad, you and me, and we're going to.
I think that would be great. So, hey, if you're interested
fun.
in seeing that, let us know in the chat here. I think that would be great. You hear us talk about these guys all the time, and to get their perspective, especially after they both watched Kenobi, be fantastic. So, well, Nick, this has been an incredibly fun hour and change, more than change. And thank you very much to everybody who hung out with us tonight. We had a good group with us the entire time. Thank you so much. And thank you to those of you who called in. We will do this again sometime very soon. And,
definitely.
Nick, without Kenobi, I feel like, you know what, the one thing we didn't touch on, before we go.
Do it right now.
We had our little bet as to what the first line of the series was going to be. And you said it was going to be, I have a bad feeling about this. I said it was going to be hello there. Now, I didn't win because it wasn't the first, but he never said I have a bad feeling about this. So
he never said it.
I just want to take a little credit for a little tiny victory.
So here's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I already have a couple of things to send you in the mail. Jack's poster, some other stuff.
Right.
As a result, because you didn't win the bet, I didn't win the bet, but my thing didn't show up, and you kind of like late game Hail Mary.
I came in like 14th place, but you didn't.
So what we're going to do is I will send you I'll still send you a bottle of booze. It just will be like half as good as what you would have gotten.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's what we're gonna do.
Look, I'm never one to say no to a bottle of booze. So I think that's how we got here.
Pete gets half the point.
Half the point. So, all right. Well, hey Nick, this was great, and may the force be with you.
Always.